So, the Wedding of River Song.
Yeah, how about that?
Yeah, how about it indeed? I imagine you watched it.
I did, in fact.
I am imagining you watching it.
Good. I'm glad you got that image.
Oh, you just laughed at a funny thing someone said in the episode. In the episode, yeah.
Oh, okay. I see.
In my imagination, if you watch. Anyhow, I'm Tom Dickinson.
And I'm Louis Midas.
And this is the Cloister Room,
a podcast about Doctor Who and other things.
Did you like the episode?
I did, actually.
Oh, man.
What?
Well, I was hoping you wouldn't, so then we could, argue about it.
Okay, well, sorry.
Because
sorry I liked it.
I know
I'm so sorry.
This one's been kind of divisive.
Yeah, okay.
And I watched it twice.
I did too.
I was out of town for a wedding, as I know you were as well.
Mm-hmm.
And we were just out for the day. I didn't stay over any place, but I ended up getting back close to midnight, and that's when I sat down to watch the episode. And I was tired and I was grumpy, and I guess it must not have hit me the right way, or maybe it was that it took me the second viewing to sort of put together all the pieces in a way that was satisfying to me.
Mm-hmm. Actually, that's a very similar situation to myself. I was also very tired when I watched it, because I watched it in my hotel room, and it was very late. And so I watched it. I actually watched it again on my plane ride home, and that was similar situation where I sort of absorbed it and was like, which is surprising because usually I have trouble watching things on planes, but this seemed to work out well for me.
Yeah, I have trouble watching things on planes, too, because the plane tickets are so expensive. I just find it's not cost-effective. But
Good, yeah.
But anyway, I have a question.
Okay.
Has there ever been, in the history of this podcast, something you really didn't like that I really did?
I don't think so.
Or in the history of you knowing me, actually.
No, I don't think so. Is that bad?
Well, no, because the thing is, there have been a few instances of you liking something a lot more than I did.
Well, it's true.
It's very rarely the other way around.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I gotta find something to hate.
Well, I mean, other than Vampires in Venice.
Well, true. I do hate that episode.
Yeah, or Apple products.
Well, yeah, I guess I kind of do.
Yeah, because I like those.
Yeah.
But... So yeah, I mean... But anyway, So, for the purposes of making things more interesting, I'm going to shift into my character from after immediately watching it, and object to various things from the episode.
Okay.
Actually, you know what? No, I'm not even going to bother doing that. I might just. Well, the thing is, after I watched the episode, my immediate reaction was, I turned off the TV, and then I said, no, and then I just went to bed. I was like, no.
Yeah, no, I mean, upon first viewing, I thought it was kind of confusing. it didn't really do anything for me emotionally, I guess. And I think I knew I was going to watch it again because I wasn't satisfied with just one viewing. But I also felt, it's kind of weird. My initial reaction, I remember being kind of let down by how it ended. And okay, if there is one thing that I didn't like about this episode, it was them including the previously where they specifically showed the Tesselecta.
Did you figure it out based on that?
I suspected. I was like, they're gonna do something with the Tesselecta, aren't they? It's gonna be... I mean, I understand, thinking about it, I like how well this episode adheres to, I guess, what we could refer to as the established rules of time. Mm-hmm. Because the event did happen as it was perceived in the first episode, the name of which escapes me right now. Oh,
The Impossible Astronaut.
Yes, exactly.
Only our assumption was that the Doctor had died and that was a fixed point, but in reality the fixed point was the Tesselecta.
Right.
Getting shot.
Right. It was the same event, just sort of recontextualized. Because, and I mean, in retrospect...
I've heard people saying, well, the Doctor tricked time by replacing himself with a Tesselecta such that, time shouldn't be easy to trick in that way. And I think people who say that are misunderstanding what happened.
Right. Because, we're assuming that there's this, I don't know, we kept seeing this image in the TARDIS console, the Doctor, date of death, whatever, in Utah, whatever it was, April 22nd or 23rd, something like that. And it's you're assuming that, there's this big universal obituary that, is 100% factually correct all the time. And you're assuming that there's no way for misinformation to spread, I guess. And that seems silly to me.
Right. And, one of the thing I think that made me... Well, there were two things about this episode that initially made me really upset. Mm-hmm. One was I didn't like the Tesselecta thing. Uh-huh. I actually didn't see it coming at all, personally.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the Tesselecta was in the opening credits, and I'm like, well, why is the Tesselecta here? And then the Doctor meets the Tesselecta captain, and I was like, oh, okay, well, I guess that explains why the Tesselecta's here. And I didn't think anything else of it after that. So I was completely surprised by the end. And one of the things, and we'll get to the other thing later, I think, but for now, I guess we're on this topic. One of the things that I strongly disliked was the notion that we were so certain the Doctor was going to die. We had Captain Everett Delaware III tell us, I can save you a lot of time and tell you that's not a duplicate, it is the Doctor, and he is certainly dead. And then we had everyone telling us, it's a fixed point that the Doctor's going to die. Obviously they were going to find a way out of the Doctor's death.
Right.
And I had hoped it was going to be something a little bit more complicated and impactful than, he's just inside of a Tesselecta. This is the same as though it were the Ganger. It's really ultimately sort of the same.
True.
It's not really the Doctor. It's a thing that looks like the Doctor and is controlled by the Doctor.
Right.
But... that upset me because, we spent so much time talking about the finality and the immutable certainty of it, and then it's just very, very, very easily solved, and the Doctor was never in any peril at all. Mm-hmm. But then, I sort of, on second viewing, I came at it from the different approach, is that, okay, well, the reason we were so certain is because the Doctor was so determined to fake his own death.
That's interesting.
So that makes it make sense that we have Canton saying the Doctor's certainly dead.
Right.
I mean, the Doctor perhaps gave him that impression deliberately.
Yes.
It makes sense that everyone in the universe thinks the Doctor died at this point, because the Doctor, that's exactly what the Doctor wanted.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, was because the Doctor was faking his own death, or because that was not something we ever really imagined, was that the Doctor would try to fake his own death. And so I think that's I do agree that is better. And actually, I was thinking about it. Who's to say that the Doctor didn't come to Canton and say, "Hey, look, I need you to tell everyone I'm dead," or something like that. There was really no reason. And I mean,
I don't think he would have done that.
Okay.
And the reason for that is because he wasn't going to tell anyone. He wasn't even going to tell Amy.
True.
He wasn't going to tell Rory. He wasn't going to tell River. And in the end, he had to tell River. He had no other choice. And but he went to great lengths not to tell River. Like only as a very last resort did he do that. So I'm guessing Canton wasn't in on it.
True. Okay. Fair point. But I guess the one thing I don't like about this is, and I mean, I guess it doesn't really bother me. It just kind of, I guess I'm not thrilled about it. I guess I want to say how well the Tesselecta was able to impersonate the Doctor. And I mean, I guess it helps that the Doctor was actually inside the Tesselecta. But like even actually, now that I think about it, how did they? Not that I really care about this, but
are you gonna ask about the regeneration?
Yes.
That's something Moffat actually tweeted about that.
Did he really? Wait, I missed this.
It might have been in reply to someone because I didn't see it at first. He tweets a lot of replies.
Oh,
like he replies a lot to fans, so it's worth just scrolling through his own Twitter feed rather than just waiting for them to show up in your stream. But he said something like the mill being like the special effects department. The mill can do that effect in 2011, and you think a shape-shifting robot from the future can't?
Okay, that's fair enough. I'll accept that. That's good. I like that. Okay, in that case, no complaints. Perfect episode, Stephen Moffat.
I don't know that it was perfect.
No, I wouldn't say that it was perfect.
One thing I disliked and still kind of dislike is the fact that, and this isn't so much a complaint about the episode as how it fits with the ending of Closing Time, where the Doctor just resolutely goes off to his death, and he's in that frame of mind that he's definitely not in at the beginning of this.
True.
In this, he's like still okay. He's like, I'm investigating. I'm trying to figure out how I can avoid it. And like I'm not so angry anymore that he avoided it so easily. But I am. I do think it's a little jarring to go straight from Closing Time. He's like, well, I'm about to go off to die, and then at the beginning of this episode, he's interrogating a Dalek or something.
Right. Actually, just a minor point. I did like the appearance of the Daleks in kind of this sort of inconsequential role. Because I like that they're giving the Daleks a rest, but I still like seeing them. And I sort of like knowing that they're there. And so I kind of liked this little appearance, but that was just like a thing that I thought was pretty neat. Like as a complete side note.
Yeah, Moffat said they weren't going to be in this series, and then a couple months ago he said, well, guess what? I was lying. They're back. And this is what it was. So that's fine. I was a little disappointed when I found out they were going to be back, because I do think they need kind of a rest. Yeah. But this was not objectionable at all to me.
Right. Well, and I like just kind of seeing, like I said, I like seeing that the Daleks are still out there, and they're still up to stuff, doing mischief and what have you.
Right, because that was the point of Victory of the Daleks.
Right.
That they're back for real now, and they're part of the universe. Whereas before, every time you want to bring back the Daleks, you had to sort of justify, okay, how is it that there are no Daleks, except, one survived.
Right. Yeah, so that's nice, I guess. I mean, I do just like that kind of reminder that they're there, But I also like that the Doctor's not at all concerned about the fact that they're, doing whatever they're doing. He just needs information from them. But yeah, that's cool. But yeah.
I didn't like spending so much time on another alternate universe.
Yeah.
Very reminiscent of the Big Bang. It was very I don't know. I get that's the story that Moffat was telling was like, River refuses to kill the Doctor, so it creates this other universe in which this sort of story plays out. But I don't think we needed to. I don't know. I don't think bringing back Churchill was necessary.
Yeah.
Or the Silurian Doctor, or any of that. I have a feeling like Moffat must have just gone through his address book and been like, okay, who's available on these dates to film? Because I need a bunch of callbacks. And I got Dickens. I did like seeing Dickens. That was cool.
Yeah. That was nifty. Yeah, I mean, some of it did seem a little bit kind of unnecessary and just sort of, I don't know. Comparing, just like in general though, comparing this finale to the previous series' finale, I don't see. I almost want to like pick a favorite of the two, and I liked the thing that I didn't really like about. I really liked. Shoot, what was the name of? Oh, The Big Bang.
Big Bang, yeah.
Yeah, wow. Doing terrible with names tonight. The thing I liked about The Big Bang was kind of the sort of... It was very, like, emotionally good. I don't know, I lost my train of thought there. But this didn't seem to have that... Like, this finale didn't really seem to have much of an emotional impact. As much as the last finale did. And I don't really say that that's a requirement. But I think actually you did mention that it was kind of it. I don't remember what you said, but yeah.
Well, I think even the last finale was not as emotionally impactful as the Russell T Davies finales.
Well, that's true.
Like, and those had like those are like tear jerkers. They had big, like huge moments. Specifically, like I'm thinking of Doomsday.
Right.
Last of the Time Lords with the Doctor cradling the dying Master in his arms. Mm-hmm. And then you had Journey's End with Donna.
Yeah.
But I do think in this case, like for instance with Amy and Rory, there's not really much to their involvement in the story, but you almost don't need as much because we have so much background on them that what little of them is there, there's like we know who Amy and Rory are, so just seeing this whole Amy doesn't remember Rory and then she does remember Rory, that's a very simple thing, but since there's so much background to it, it sort of has an impact, mm-hmm. even though they don't really spend any time on it at all. It's just sort of there in the background.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of nifty.
Yeah. I also at first I didn't like this, and now that I think about it, I kind of like it more. Was the Amy being able to remember everything that had happened in the previous universe, I guess you could say. Because initially I was like, oh, we're back to this again. But then, like, I looked, like, when upon my second viewing, I rewatched that scene, which is a very humorous scene where the Doctor mm-hmm. goes on this long speech, and at the end he realizes that he didn't need to do all that. And I actually liked that a lot because I feel like it was kind of commenting on that whole thing, and I think now it can be less important. Because I feel like, and I don't really think that this came up, I guess this, in my mind, came up more than it actually did come up, but it just seemed like they were kind of relying on Amy's specialness in driving, the plot or whatever. I don't know if the
plot of this episode?
Of episodes in the past.
Yeah.
It was the finale of the last series, and I'm just not sure where else. I don't know why I thought that was such a big...
Well, you'd think it would have... the thing is, she's able to remember... The big thing with her is she's able to remember negated timelines.
Mm-hmm.
That's essentially what the crack has done to her, which allowed her to remember Rory, and it allowed her to remember the Doctor. And now this time around, it allows her to remember everything but Rory. And you'd think that would have come into play in The Girl Who Waited.
Right.
Like, you'd think she would remember old Amy, like being that person.
Right. Interesting. Huh. I
think it's just kind of one of those things that they use when it's convenient.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, sure.
But also, that kind of ties into one of the more confusing parts of this episode, which is, the scene at the end with Amy and River.
Yeah.
That presumably takes place at some point after the God Complex.
Right.
So, at some point after the God Complex, Amy just abruptly remembers the events of this episode.
Right.
That's really not clear to me. Like, it's not clear to me why she would remember it after that, but not before that.
That's I didn't even think of that. That is interesting, because it did all happen within that moment in The Impossible Astronaut when the Doctor is quote-unquote killed. So that's pretty much when she should remember it. Technically. I mean, yeah, well, I don't know. Maybe she has a very selective memory.
I guess. And my question is, like, does Rory remember that? That's not clear to me. Although maybe because, I mean, there was also early on, there was some question as to how much Rory remembers being the Auton soldier, the Roman.
Right.
And I think in The Impossible Astronaut, it said that he doesn't always remember it, but sometimes he does. Something along those lines, I think.
I seem to recall that, yeah.
So maybe it's something similar here. I don't know.
Yeah. Amy remembers things when the plot calls for it.
Right. And maybe that's good enough.
Yeah, yeah, I don't know.
The other thing I really hated on first viewing was the wedding scene.
Yeah.
That whole scene on the top of the pyramid did not make any sense to me on first viewing, and on second viewing I liked it a lot. On second viewing it made more sense to me. Like, the sequence of events there is like, River is saying something about, like, oh, the whole universe is calling out to you and whatever. I'm still not sure what that has to do with anything.
Right. Well, yeah.
Go on.
No, I don't. I have nothing particularly for that.
Well, just, to draw this off on a tangent, though, she says something like, the only place where the alternate timeline is happening is on Earth. The rest of the universe is just going on normally.
Yeah.
And she's sending out that message, help the Doctor.
Uh-huh.
And she's sending it to the future, and she's sending it to the beginning of the universe.
Right.
So maybe that's the reason the question is Doctor Who.
Interesting.
But I honestly don't think that's the kind of thing Moffat would revisit. Like, I think being in an episode like a year from now and saying, oh, hey, remember this one random small thing that happened in the finale of last year?
Right.
That's probably not going to happen. But,
right.
Never mind. But anyhow, what I'm saying is, like, we go straight from that, and then the Doctor's like, oh, you can't do this, I'm so angry at you. And River's like, well, I'm not going to kill you. And the Doctor's like, all right, let's get married. And then she's like, oh, okay, well, now that we're married, I guess I'm willing to shoot you. And that scene didn't make any sense to me. Until I realized on second viewing that, I mean, whether it's even a real wedding at all is questionable, because he's not the Doctor, he's a Tesselecta, and he doesn't actually say his name to her.
Right. Well, that's the thing, is that we know that,
we know that it's at some point River learns the Doctor's name.
Right. And I believe. Right, and I think we talked about this before, I think the Doctor says that there's, like, only one way he could tell her his name.
And I would not be surprised if we find out a little bit more about that soon.
Well, yeah.
Because seeing as Doctor Who is gonna, be a big thing, I wouldn't be surprised if that ties into River, knowing the Doctor's name.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, which is interesting because when you think about it, River was supposed to kill the Doctor to prevent him from saying his name, and she now, or at some point in the future, will know his name.
Mm-hmm.
So she would, so that's kind of, so that's silly.
Yeah, but it is silly, and there are a lot of weird, silly things like, the Doctor dying but not really, and then River dying but not really in Sounds of the Library. There's all these weird little things. I don't know. They're just things.
Yeah, no, they're things.
But yeah, my So what do you think about that scene? I mean, did that bother you? Does it bother you more? Does it bother you more? Are you angry about it, Lewis?
No, I wouldn't. No, I mean, it did kind of bother me. And I mean, it seemed like a thing, and I sort of chalked it up to just being tired. But it really was, I think my first viewing, I sort of was like, what's going on? This is all happening so fast. I have no idea what's going on. And, going back and watching it a second time sort of helped in that, knowing what was sort of, what was going on behind, but that I didn't know upon first viewing. That sort of helped, and so that scene bothered me less upon knowing what was really going on, I guess.
And for me, on top of just knowing what was really going on, the more I thought about it, when we were first introduced to River, basically what people sort of thought is, oh, she's the Doctor's future wife or something. And that's pretty much always been what people thought.
Right.
That someday she's going to be someone that the Doctor is very close to and trusts very much. But up till now, the Doctor has never really trusted her. It's always sort of been River saying to the Doctor, well, I know you don't trust me, but someday you will, and that's got to be good enough for now, because we got to get out of this bad situation that we're in, whatever it happens to be. But, this episode is, and I think this is what Stephen Moffat is definitely going for, this episode is when that stops. This episode is when the Doctor finally trusts River, because he lets her in on the whole secret, and knowing that she's gonna go to jail for a crime she didn't commit, just to sort of sell the story that he died there.
Right.
So he trusts River now in a way that we always knew he someday would. So this is the time where River has now become the person to the Doctor that we always knew she would be. We know who River Song is.
That's interesting.
And so having a wedding be the event that causes that, it just seemed really fitting to me. The more I thought about it, and so I liked it a lot more on the second viewing.
That's really interesting. I really had not thought about it in terms of that, but yeah, I mean, I would agree. I think that. And it's funny because I sort of had it in my mind okay, this is going to round out the end of this season is going to round out River's kind of story arc, and then after this she can kind of stop being so important. But clearly, I mean, and in some senses we now know who River is, and so we can stop asking that question. But I think that in some sense she is going to continue to be an important character.
Well, even if she never shows up on the show again, I feel like that would be okay, because we now know, okay, the Doctor goes off on all these unseen adventures with her.
That's a good point.
So I mean, it's just that River has always been this person from the Doctor's future, and that future just happens to be here now.
Right.
We're now at that future, where the Doctor he's already had all these unseen adventures, like the Jim the Fish thing.
Right.
That has all presumably already happened for him.
Right.
So I don't know. I just thought that was really kind of cool that was a cool way of bringing us to that point. I mean, maybe we'll see River again. I have a feeling we probably will, but if she never shows up again, I won't be thinking, oh, there's all this untold story left about River. Who is she really to the Doctor? Because I feel like we've sort of got that.
Yeah, I would agree. And actually, just sort of jumping back to I guess talking about the question. I guess we now know sort of where the show's going to be headed, because I mean it was very. I did actually like the final scene where they sort of allude to what's going to be happening in the future. Mm-hmm. You're talking about the question being asked and things like that, and I thought that was cool. I don't know if and it's just interesting to see. I would be interested to know sort of how much in advance Moffat was planning all this. Because, I mean, certainly the River storyline, he had things in mind, all the way back in Series 4.
Have you read any of his interviews about that?
No.
One of the things he's said is, when he wrote River in Series 4, he didn't know if he'd ever use the character again. Because he didn't know whether Alex Kingston was going to be available, he didn't know whether people would like the character. He hadn't even created Amy Pond yet, so he didn't... and then when he brought in Amy Pond, when he created Amy Pond, he deliberately gave her that, the name Pond, the water-themed name, thinking, well, I'm going to use this character, this is going to be my companion. If I get a chance to use River, then I'm going to make that connection there. I mean, he obviously had ideas, but he didn't have a firm plan, until he did.
Well, that's good of him.
Right. Causality.
But yeah, no, that's interesting. I mean, yeah, I mean, I think it's cool how he was able to sort of expand on that, and I think that was a very interesting. I mean, it's a very interesting way to introduce a character, and I think it was kind of I mean, it was interesting in Series 4 to sort of introduce a character that has known the Doctor for all her life, but he's never met her, and I'm glad that he was able to sort of sustain it in an interesting way and sort of keep the character, to keep encounters with that character interesting and fresh. I guess I want to say.
Yeah.
So I thought that was cool. That's pretty impressive. But yeah.
But as for the question being Doctor Who, that's he's kind of got to step lightly there, because you don't want to ruin the character.
How do you mean?
Well, the core sort of idea of the program is that the Doctor is in some sense mysterious to us, and we've never really known exactly who he is, why he is the way he is, and people have different writers have sort of given us ideas in that direction by hinting at things, but the character still has to be mysterious at the end of the day. So you can, I think the best way to do that is to give us tantalizing hints that suggest things and open up new questions.
Right.
Like, I don't know, we still don't really know very much about the Doctor's relationship to the Master early on, for instance. We still don't know much about his childhood. We don't know anything about his parentage. We don't know anything about his name. We don't know anything about why he can't say his name, whereas other Time Lords seem to be able to, or whether he just refuses to. We don't really know anything along those lines. And if we know too much, I mean, I guess the 50th anniversary is kind of the right time to be exploring that.
True,
if ever. But I mean, a lot of people are speculating that the fall of the 11th is going to be Matt Smith leaving and Stephen Moffat leaving at the 50th anniversary.
Yeah,
and then in the next year we'll start over with a new showrunner and a new Doctor, and they've got to have somewhere to go with the character. I mean,
True.
They can't be like, this is our doctor. His name is Paul.
Right. Well, yeah, and, actually, I don't think it has any actual... I don't think it was really... Once again, I don't think that Stephen Moffat was planning things this far in advance. But I actually, a few days ago, I was thinking back to The Girl in the Fireplace, and I actually tweeted about this.
Yeah, I saw that.
Which, yeah, and, I thought that was kind of cool. It's just so vague. It could really mean anything, and I'm sure it wasn't a reference to something that Stephen Moffat was going to write, 5 years later. But I thought that was kind of cool. And actually does mention when Madame de Pompadour is actually sort of sifting through the doctor's mind. She does mention a lonely childhood, but once again, that is just a little tidbit that sort of brings up more questions and things like that. But yeah, just the whole Doctor Who being more than just a secret. That's something that I don't know. I liked that, but I almost feel like this is something that this is the show's name, and I almost feel like, or I want to imagine Stephen Moffat growing up watching Doctor Who and always wondering to himself man, why is this show called Doctor Who? And and trying to come up with this really intricate reason for which the show is called Doctor Who, and writing this really complicated sort of storyline, and next season will be the result of that, but that's probably not going to happen. But it would be cool to think about.
Well, at the very least, I think it's clear that he is preoccupied with the question of the Doctor's name in a way that Russell T Davies wasn't.
True.
Because it very rarely came up in the Russell T Davies era. The only times it really came up that I can remember are The Girl in the Fireplace and Forest of the Dead, which are both
right.
Stephen Moffat episodes, which is one of the reasons why I was so inclined to think in Let's Kill Hitler that the oldest question in the universe was going to be Doctor Who.
Right.
Because that is, that just seemed like a very Moffat thing to me. And I think the mention in Forest of the Dead, that's my... In my opinion, that's a really good example of giving a tantalizing hint, because what he says is, "There's only one time I could ever tell anyone my name," something like that.
Yeah, right.
Something along those lines. Which that tells us things. It tells us, oh, so we've always known that the Doctor doesn't tell people his name. Now we know that for some reason he is bound to not do so.
Right.
And that, of course, brings up a whole different series of questions that. That gives us more information, but it also only makes it more mysterious.
Right.
And I have a feeling that anything Stephen Moffat does along those lines is gonna sort of do the same, which I think is cool. I think that's awesome. I love that stuff. So
yeah, good on him.
So what do you think about what we learned about the silence and everything? And yeah.
Well, what did we learn about the silence?
What we learned is that
What did we learn today?
we sort of never knew what it is they were really after.
Oh, yeah.
And even though they said silence will fall, we don't really know what that means, or we didn't. And I think I always just kind of assumed that it was silence rock! Or something them pumping themselves up, that's their battle cry. The Suntarans say, Suntar, ha! They're silence will fall! Yeah! And then they go out and conquer.
Yeah.
And what that means is the silence are going to be victorious. But
right.
It turns out that has a very specific meaning. What they're actually saying is, no, silence will fall when the question is asked. And what that means is not they're predicting that silence will fall. They're okay, guys, we got to make sure silence falls when the question is asked.
Right. Yeah.
They want to prevent the Doctor from answering the question.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's... I do think that what we learned about the silence is... I actually like the thought of them being a religious order, and that kind of sort of this is their mission. They have a clear mission to... And actually... Yeah, because even at the start of the second half, I guess for actually the most of like the majority of the season, we didn't really know what they were after, and then that was sort of made clear, and I'm satisfied with that, and I think that that's actually pretty cool how that all ties in. Though I'd like to point out, and this is kind of, I would just like to, I feel like I need to go back and rewatch Series 5, but, when they were talking about silence in Season 5, it seemed very vague, and I don't know how to make sense of it within the context of Season 6.
That's a really good point, because I was thinking about the exact same thing, and I mean, I guess there's an extent to which this is just me making stuff up, but I mean, the way I've tried to make sense of it is, well, I mean, first of all, kind of like I said before, I don't think Moffat's gonna go back and explain, hey, remember when the TARDIS exploded and there were cracks in time 2 years ago that we haven't mentioned since during Season 6? Well, let me explain for you how that makes sense. Like, I don't think there's any really good way for him to do that, but I think, given that we know that the silence will fall, and that has something to do with the cracks in the universe, and it has to do with the exploding TARDIS, and the silence have this particular goal they want, is to prevent the Doctor from answering the question on the fields of Trenzalore, the fall of the 11th, where no living creature can lie or refuse to answer, or something like that. But I think that was just another attempt by the silence to remove the Doctor by forcing him to reboot the universe without himself in it.
That's interesting.
Which he did. Then Amy brought him back, so it backfired. So this is take 2.
This is their plan B.
Right, exactly.
The families, they have a plan B, and the silence had a plan B too. Anyway, yeah. No, I would go with that. The only thing that really bothers me, and once again, I'm gonna. Actually, no. Well, okay. The only thing that bothers me is, once again, Vampires in Venice, or Vampires of Venice.
True. Where
at the very end, everything becomes quiet all of a sudden. The Doctor's like, Rory, do you hear that? And I don't know, that seems kind of weird and out of place to me. Although, actually, now thinking about it, if it were a crack that were... I'm going to use a... Yeah, like, if it were a crack that was pointing to the... whatever, Fields of Trenzalore, at which point silence would fall, maybe the silence from that point in time and space would sort of emanate. I don't know.
Well, I don't think the Fields of Trenzalore is literal silence. I think when they say silence will fall, they just mean, we're just going to make sure the Doctor doesn't go there and answer that question.
I want to think it's literal.
Okay. Yeah, and then you have what's her name? Calviari, is that her name?
Yeah.
Then she says something like, "We were running from the silence."
Yeah, like through
maybe
some.
They just were.
Right, well, yeah, but yeah, they were talking about. But then, how would they remember it? Come on, they didn't have those eye patches. But no, well, yeah, because I think what she said was that there were cracks, and that through some of them they saw silence. I think that's what they said. So, I mean, I guess you do see the silence, don't you? Actually, you know what? This makes perfect sense to me.
Or maybe she's just like super poetic.
Yeah, we're perhaps taking her too literally.
Yeah, I think maybe Moffat just hadn't fully thought out.
Could be
the story at that point. Like, I don't think it will ever be explained how Prisoner Zero knew anything about any of this.
Right.
Because, who is Prisoner Zero? Why would this random criminal in a jail cell...
Yeah, how did they know? Maybe Prisoner Zero tried to join the silence and was rejected. Like,
could be.
Prisoner Zero's application was just rejected. Maybe that's it. Maybe you need to be able to wear a suit in order to get into the silence religious order.
Mm-hmm.
And Prisoners, but no, Prisoners. You know what? Why am I even talking about this? I have no. Let's just move on. Can we?
So, yeah. Other things about the episode. I liked the Brigadier thing.
Yeah, I thought that was really nice.
It was. Also, so a lot of people have joked about the eye patches because you saw Inferno, right?
Yes.
In Inferno, they go to like that alternate universe where the Brigadier wears an eye patch, and there's this famous story where I guess it was as a like in the scene, like you walk into the Brigadier's office and he's got his back to them, and then he twirls his chair around, and it's him with an eye patch. It's not the Brigadier; it's the brigade leader. But in like on set, I mean, my understanding is I've never heard him tell the story, but my understanding is that as a prank, all of the cast and crew put on eye patches, so when he twirled around, he just saw them all in eye patches. And so the notion of having a story where everyone's wearing an eye patch, a lot of people have said, yeah, this was a Brigadier tribute episode.
That's interesting.
But yeah.
That's adorable. But yeah, no, I did like that though. I thought that was really cool.
Hey, did you watch Doctor Who Confidential?
I didn't.
Are you aware that this was the last ever Doctor Who Confidential?
Yeah. Well, and I've always been meaning. I've always been saying to myself, like, oh, I should go back and rewatch the Doctor Who Confidentials because I bet there's a lot of really cool stuff that goes on in those things that I don't know about.
Well, not a lot of it is really all that worthwhile. So some of it's pretty dumb, and a lot of it's just people talking about how great they are.
Oh, I see.
Like, just patting themselves on the back for making the best show ever.
Well, I never tire of hearing people pat themselves on the back.
I mean, granted, it is a good show, so...
Well, yeah.
But I made special, like, attention to tune into this week's episode because, two things. First of all, there was, I knew that there was going to be this special segment where it's like a timeline of River Song from her perspective. With Alex Kingston reading the narration. And I mean, whether that particular version of the timeline is quote unquote canon, I mean, who cares? But it just pieces things together for you from her birth to Silence in the Library. Yeah, and that was like maybe a 10-minute segment. But also there was this other thing on Confidential called Death is the Only Answer, which is an episode of Doctor Who written by elementary school students.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it was part of a competition that Doctor Who Confidential ran. Like, elementary school students entered a contest, and like your class could be the one to write an episode of Doctor Who, and it's like a 4-minute mini episode. It's completely nonsensical, but it's kind of cute.
Huh. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Huh.
So check it out.
I'm gonna have to.
Personally, I'm not going to miss Doctor Who Confidential when it's gone.
Well, I mean, yeah. I mean, it would be hard for me to miss it because I barely ever watched it.
Yeah, I haven't consistently watched it in a long time either. So I watched the versions on the DVDs, which are abbreviated versions.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah, they're like 10 or 15 minutes long as opposed to the actual show, which is like 45 minutes long.
Oh, man.
It seems kind of silly to me though that that a TV show would have a making of companion series that is as long as the actual show.
Right. Yeah, that does seem kind of weird. I mean, yeah, I can't think of how that would even be remotely practical.
And that's one of the reasons it got cut, for like budgetary reasons. Like, well, I mean, they're like, okay, guys, do we really need to be doing this?
Right.
Because the BBC is under fire in terms of it's the money it's spending and the way it's spending it. So this seemed like sort of a thing that they might, get rid of.
Right. Huh. I mean, yeah, I actually, interestingly, I watched the Doctor Who this is quite possibly the only Doctor Who I've started like 3 sentences at this point. This is, shoot, and now I can't remember any of them. One of the few Doctor Who Confidentials that I watched was actually, Vampires of Venice. Strangely. I guess strangely. And I actually enjoyed all the stuff that I found out In particular, the fact that they didn't actually film in Venice, which, I mean, I guess I should have figured. But I did think it was interesting how they sort of mimicked the effect of Venice without actually having to shoot in Venice, because Venice is such a unique sort of place. But yeah, no, and... heck, I don't know. I lost my train of thought. But it's just... I guess what I was trying to say was that I always found it... On the rare occasions in which I watched Doctor Who Confidential, I was always interested by the stuff I learned. So there you go.
Yeah, I'm always interested in behind-the-scenes stuff, but, I mean, these days we got the internet.
We do. We got it.
We've said a lot.
We have. We've said more than we usually say about a Doctor Who episode.
I think so. And we still haven't said anything like broad about the season. Want to save that for next time?
Sure.
You've been listening to The Cloister Room, a podcast about Doctor Who and nothing else today. Yeah, if you have any questions or concerns or comments or, just those about this show, then you can go to thecloisterroom.com, where you can find out ways to get in touch with us, or also download additional episodes that, they might address those concerns. Like, if you're concerned, why are they only talking about one episode of Doctor Who instead of, like other episodes? But, if that's a concern you may find addressed at one of our other 30 episodes of The Cloister Room. So, until next week, when we'll be talking about, stuff, I've been Tom Dickinson.
And I've been Lewis Midas.
Goodbye.
Adios.